You will have to face the issue of fair housing squarely and unequivocally. Needless to say, I do have a plan in mind which I cannot, or more specifically, I do not wish to make public at this time. However, if all goes well, and I think that it shall, it will mean that you will no longer be able to hide behind the political opinion rendered by our very politic city attorney. It is always interesting to note the reaction that occurs whenever open housing legislation is proposed on any level of government. Inevitably, it will be a statement to the effect that I'm all in favor of equal treatment for everybody, but you can't legislate open housing. You simply can't force this sort of thing. It only antagonizes, and so forth and so on. I can say only one thing, that either you don't read and you are not sufficiently knowledgeable to speak to the subject, and that could well be, or you are just afraid to speak. You lack the courage to speak. It was my wish to save my colleagues the embarrassment of dealing with such a political hot potato during the months when they would be running for office. However, now that I have seen the lack of sincerity as exhibited by the committee, the lack of good faith, and the total unwillingness on the part of the council to deal constructively with the problems of Milwaukee's minorities, it is my firm intention to submit this ordinance for reconsideration as soon as the rules of this council will allow, and then to resubmit it until you, gentlemen, acknowledge the existence of discrimination and face squarely the need for legislative action by this honorable body.
There is de facto segregation in the public schools in Milwaukee as in most of the other big cities of our country. And the only comment that I can make is that all people of goodwill must work together in a very vigorous and determined manner to solve this problem, which I think is a basic social evil. The problem of economic deprivation is one of the most serious problems. It may be the most serious problem that the Negro confronts. We know that there must be basic economic reforms, and we know that there must be political action or political reforms to bring about this economic reform. We do need a lifting of the minimum wage to at least $1.75 an hour, and there needs to be extended coverage. This minimum wage law should cover the some 18 million workers who are not presently covered, and also legislation to develop massive public works programs to deal with the problem of unemployment and the problems which are developing as a result of automation and cybernation. Any city is potentially explosive if the power structure in that city is not willing to grant the necessary concessions and give the necessary victories to the nonviolent movement that will give the Negro a sense of hope. Legislation that will make fair employment policies a reality in law enforcement agencies, because here again we have segregated justice through and through, and it's almost lily white from policemen right on down to the courtroom and employees within courts and in jails. The disappointment, the frustration, the discontent, and the seething desperation within the Negro community happen to be very real. And if a city with both its economic and political power structure is not willing to remove the basic causes for this discontent in the Negro community, then that city is potentially explosive.
They ought to know their job. For heaven's sake, they ought to not be waiting for the Archbishop to come and take them by the hand and show them how to cross the street. They ought to know that.
Father, the Archbishop has also made it clear that Cris and the Indians have the right to march.
Right.
They should have known that at the beginning.
Father, what about Mayor Meyer's attitude regarding the fair housing ordinance?
We don't agree with him. Look,
Passing a citywide ordinance would do nothing more than hasten the exodus to the suburbs.
Sure. We agree with Mayor Meyer that there should be a housing ordinance on a county-wide basis. In fact, the Youth Council may very soon be marching in some of the suburban communities that do not have fair housing legislation. But we think that the mayor is also passing the buck. We need fair housing legislation here in the city of Milwaukee. And he's always talking about the federal government, the state government, and the county, and he never talks about Mayor Meyer and his city of Milwaukee. Mayor Meyer is the mayor of the city of Milwaukee, and he ought to be working for fair housing legislation right here.
Let him run for governor if he wants.
Right. Someone comes to me and with a problem, I don't say, well, I can't do anything, I'm not Pope or I'm not Archbishop. I work in the capacity of my office. And it's the same thing with the mayor in the city of Milwaukee. He shouldn't be talking about the governor consistently or about the county consistently or about the federal government consistently. He ought to be talking about Mayor Meyer and his city of Milwaukee.
How long do you plan to continue this demonstration?
And this will be determined by the commando body. Strategy and tactics are discussed every night after the demonstrations.
Ed, who did you see carrying a permit?
Kurtz, K-U-R-T-Z, and he's deputy.
Good, man. They study everything. You know that?
We're tired of that. We want action.
And last night,
We're
man.
telling you what we need.
Right. And
Tell you what we need.
last night, man, with that police protection, just want to say one thing on that, man. Now, Father Groppi was at the head of the line. Everybody out on the south side, it seemed, fell in love with him, you understand? And he asked for a permit to walk down the street, to march, you understand? To have a parade in the streets. They denied him the right to march in the street, you understand? Okay, so what happened? When we got out there, and all them white people out there, I don't know if you want to call them bigots or what you want to call them, it's up to you, you understand? But anyway, then all of them got next to us, and the man says, march in the street. So Father Groppi said, well, look, we asked for a permit to march in the street. We couldn't. We couldn't even get it. So the man says, well, go ahead. The policeman said this. Go ahead up through them without protection. Remember this, he always got protection. So have those marchers. Because the police force, with somebody like Chief Breyer leading them, if you want to start a riot, put a man in office like Breyer. If you want to stop one, take him out of office. If you want a stupid cat up there to lead you, you put him up there and let him lead you. The black man knows what he has to do. Don't nobody have to tell him that. And the black man's going to do it. Now, you wanted to call the National Guards in over here because a few black people got out there and burned up a few houses. Will you call them in when 5,000,
8,000.
well, 8,000 white bigots or anything else you want to call them, comes out there and throws at little kids and women. And you call them heroes, man?
Right.
You take Kosciuszko and kiss him, you hear? Because to me, he was a professional killer.
He was a mercenary.
Now, if the black man doesn't go out there in the streets and have a lot of fun, I don't know what he should do. Because every man that was in that riot, I admire him.
I want to ask the press here something, because I'm definitely concerned. When we had a disturbance here in the black community, you had those cameras all over the place, and you had this news media all over the place, and you reported every window that got broke. But last night you looked on television and no one saw those white bigots out there screaming, we want slaves and niggers go home and everything else. I want to ask, what was the reason for that?
You're listening to the wrong station.
I watched Channel 6, I didn't see a thing. And I understand Channel 12 had very little on. That's white power. In other words, it's a white man's press. That's what it is. So you're wasting your time here tonight also.
You man like me tell you people something, man.
You're a neighbor outside.
That's correct.
What do you think when you walk back across the 16th Street line after
Thought it was
Well,
fun.
I've been back there many times and got the reaction I expected. White, segregated, culturally deprived.
Well, see, I
Ghetto.
didn't expect this to myself. Because I thought that Milwaukee was a nice city, because we like it
We
here.
like it here.
We'd all greet
you
in love and yeah, and all that jive, man. Let me tell you something.
Chris Seraphim
The South Side, Surfing live on the South Side.
Well, no. Seraphim
He
said
should.
that this is not. He said this is not Selma, Alabama. We
should.
have fine racial relations here.
Yeah, okay.
All right, okay.
Let me tell you something, man. In
Mayor
the
said
beginning,
that.
man, I want to condemn the police force, and I hope that Chief Breyer, if you want to call him a chief, because he's the top of the Indians, you understand, I hope that he's listening. Man, you ain't got nothing for a police force. You got people out there, man, that it's 200 of us and about 5,000 or 8,000 of them, and you watching us. What's wrong with you and your boys? You're crazy? Huh? You gonna watch us? We're not doing nothing but walking and talking. See, they throwing the bricks.
Everybody go when you got to go. 8 fingers, 2 thumbs. Everybody go when you got to go. 8 fingers, 2 thumbs. Tell me the name of that page. Are the right numbers there?
The white number here?
Yeah.
The white
Father, could you tell us what happened last night?
Well, when we got out of the bus and someone threw a bottle or something, I don't know, but they started to throw tear gas bombs. They flooded the whole area with tear gas and threw them inside the house. This whole block was covered with tear gas, and police shot their rifles off up in the air and made everyone scatter. And we were on 14th Street, and then we noticed the house was on fire. It started apparently from a tear gas bomb. Prentice was across the street here. He says it was a fire bomb. I don't know. They filled the house with tear gas. That's what started the fire. The policemen burned the place down.
Who burned the place down?
The cops. Police burned it down.
It was with her child, and she came stumbling out, and the police said there was a sniper. There was no sniper in there. They were shooting those guns off all over the place, up in the air around here, and where they got the idea there was a sniper, I don't know. Where's that tear gas bomb? Look at this. Now see, this is what was taken out of the house. That's a tear gas bomb. You see that?
This the one
out of the house.
When I told everybody to move out.
And this is some of the shotgun shells they were shooting off. With all that we went through on the south side last night, there wasn't any guns fired. But they came here and they were firing those things like machine gun.
What happened?
We have a strategy meeting at 2 o'clock this afternoon. I don't know what decision the commandos are going to make as far as future action is concerned. We are very concerned about the attitude and the conduct of the mayor of the city of Milwaukee. Everyone built him up as such a great hero when there was this little disturbance on 3rd Street because he called in the National Guard immediately and put the entire city under a curfew. Well, for heaven's sake, we have a right to exercise our constitutional God-given right of free speech. That means protest, demonstration, whenever we want. We don't have to give any reasons for this. This is our constitutional right. And we have a right to get adequate and decent protection. Now, for heaven's sake, he had a white riot on the south side for the last 2 nights, and what did he call for? A voluntary curfew. He didn't have any voluntary curfew when a few blacks tore up part of 3rd Street. That's what we can. That's a double standard of justice.
Yeah, he called them hoodlums. What the hell do we call them out there throwing bricks and bottles at little kids and women, huh? Big heroes?
I'll tell you what, the mayor's always looking for an out, man. That's that go this way and that way, but never in the mayor's pocket.
And these stupid-ass cops stand around here and throw tear gas in the house with 30 little kids walking in the house and shoot off their guns, got the kids scared to run out, and then turn around and set the house on fire. Now, what kind of police department is this?
Father,
do you feel that the
Negro ministers to call off your march?
I haven't heard from the Negro ministers. I understand there was something over the radio today by Reverend Beauchamp. And I say again that the commandos of the NAACP Youth Council make the decisions for the NAACP Youth Council. What do you guys think about the Ministerial Alliance coming forth and saying we shouldn't march? Huh?
I don't care what they say. I don't care what they say.
give a doggone.
It's my right to protest. I feel like protesting. I'm going to protest. You understand?
Until we... Everybody can stick with his thoughts. As far as disproving the attitude of hate and bigotry that exists out there, you've certainly proven that.
Well, we've proven that, but we still do not have fair housing laws. You see, this neighborhood you're in right now is a Kilbertown 3 project. They're taking 1,000 black families out of this neighborhood, and they're moving them out. Now, they're supposed to be relocating, but they aren't. But the black families that are moving out of this neighborhood have no place to go. There's discrimination even on the fringe areas. You see, there's no place for black families to go. We don't have any fair housing law. We know what the attitude of the people is on the south side, but we want a fair housing law. Now that's one of our rights also. Discrimination, the Archbishop came forth and said this, the Pope came forth and said this, can in no way be justified. There's moral implications in a fair housing law, and that's what we're fighting for, that's what we're going to get. You see this house next door? The police nearly burned down her house last night. Now, she just lost her son in Vietnam 5 months ago. That house is going to be torn down. She has no place to go. We had a Marine come here. Guy spent 6 months in Vietnam, you know. Goes on to fringe areas. Lady won't rent him and his wife because of black people.
Well, Father, has your marches to the south side accomplished anything so far for fair housing?
We're going to get fair housing, not only for the city of Milwaukee, but we're going to get it on a national scene. And it's going to be this consistent type of courageous protest that's going to bring about fair housing legislation. Frederick Douglass talked about this 100 years ago. He said no one ever got their rights given to them on a platter. You've got to fight for it, you've got to struggle for it, and that's what we're doing. We're protesting, and we're going to keep agitating, we're going to keep protesting until we get what is ours.